420 children formed 42 teams and spent most of the day throwing the ball around and imitating their league heroes. In recent years, schools have shied away from league, but the department wants to encourage the development of touch footy. The idea is to prompt boys into joining mini and mod league teams and to get girls into competitive touch football. Many of the girls have skills well in advance of their male classmates.
They surprised us and they surprised the referees. The referees have been commenting all day on the ability of the girls.
But one girl did try just a little too hard. She fell heavily on her ankle. It's hoped the competition will now become a regular event at the Belmont grounds. Lauren is the toast of Rutherford High. As the school's only disabled student, she's managed to combine strong academic results and a newfound love of sport. Every break between classes, she heads straight for the gym to keep her basketball skills in tune. 4 years ago, a previously healthy Lauren woke one morning to discover she had no feeling from the waist down due to the sudden onset of a virus. She then turned her hand to sport as therapy.
At first I didn't want anything to do with it, but now once I tried it I really liked it.
In the national titles, Lauren won silver in the discus and a gold medal for shot put and javelin. But she says the javelin training hasn't been without its hitches.
Yeah, I hit the cat with my javelin.
How did that happen?
She always chases after my javelin, so I just threw it and hit her.
Any permanent damage to pussy?
No.
And the long hours of practising haven't detracted from the 13-year-old's studies.
She's been quite an outstanding member of the school and has always given everything she's got and a bit more, so that this was a matter of time, I suppose.
But Lauren isn't going to sit around with just a few national medals to accredit. She's now training to join the Australian basketball team to compete in the American Nationals later this year. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
When the guided missile frigate Newcastle was launched at the Amacon shipyard near Melbourne last year, it left an awful uncertainty for those involved in shipbuilding in Newcastle. Eglo Engineering and local workers had proven they could get the job done by building major hull sections of the ship, but there were no guarantees for further work. Eglo Engineering has since been taken over by Transfield Constructions, which has just won a $20 million contract to build 2 sections for the latest Anzac frigates. The work should secure the jobs of about 40 workers who were facing retrenchment and could lead to further employment. The frigate modules will be built on the old Eglo site at a new North Arm yard, which will be cleared by May. Construction of the 2 major hull sections should start in July. The 150th anniversary of the first Mass held in the church at its original site was celebrated yesterday. The early settlers were so proud of their little sandstone church that they moved it block by block to higher ground from the reach of floodwaters. Now a new generation maintains the faith. When the Catholic diocese closed the church 2 years ago, stripping it of its altar and sacraments, a group known as the Friends of St Michael's bought the building and vowed to maintain it as a church. The Bishop of Maitland refuses to acknowledge or consecrate St Michael's, but that didn't stop the Catholic faithful from holding a service with a Jesuit priest. Friends of St Michael's have restored much of the church's interior, and a government grant will employ 2 people to maintain the building. A fundraising festival was also held over the weekend. It's hoped the church will be used for community activities such as lectures, art shows and recitals.
It was the call Harrigan had been sweating on all night. Although he normally lines up as prop, he doesn't mind the shift in position. For the next week he will train with the side, but it won't be all running and sweat.
You train twice a day, go out that night and obviously have a few drinks and get to know each other and go out for dinner. But it's fairly intense, the training, but I think the first 3 days will be a little bit quieter and the intensity will build towards Monday night.
And although he was knocked out cold in yesterday's game, he's confident his head will be fine come Monday. One teammate who won't be running around for a while, Mark Sargent. He damaged his foot yesterday during one of his typical charges up the middle.
I've sort of dislocated an ankle before, and there was a feeling that was in my foot, not in my ankle, but the feeling was sort of that there was something fairly major had happened there, so I knew I was in a fair bit of trouble.
His foot isn't broken, but doctors suspect ligament damage. Others on the injury list include Tony Herman, Jason Martin and David Smith. Despite the injuries, the depth of the club shone through, the younger brigade ensuring the win.
I think that's an endorsement of the recruitment and the nurturing of the juniors that the club's doing.
Normally coach David Waite would have all sorts of trouble picking a team with such a long injury list, but next week's split round will give him a breather. Kirk Lawton went to Peacock Field all fired up and determined to get the Goannas off to a good start. His bustling run set the style for Cessnock. And it wasn't long until that enthusiasm paid off through the boot of Shane Craig. Toronto retaliated by sleek passing to numbers out wide, leaving Tony McFadgen the honours. The physical intensity picked up when Cessnock's Glenn George took objection to a swinging arm from Chris Coles. From there, Cessnock looked rattled and the simple things became hard. Toronto, though, weren't going to let their guard down and ran in another try. Final score, Toronto Workers 16, Cessnock 14.
Heart attacks, car accidents, assaults. If a person needs immediate hospital care, it's the public health system that caters for them. Usually private hospitals don't have accident and emergency units, but Warners Bay Hospital wants to change that. It hopes to offer a casualty service to people with private health cover. The hospital has taken the first step by establishing an emergency referral service. This means it'll treat patients for broken bones, general surgery and urinary problems if they have a referral from a GP. At this stage, the hospital doesn't want people to go direct to the hospital.
We'd prefer that not to happen. We believe we'd like to involve the general practitioners in the treatment of the patients, so we would prefer that they go to the general practitioner first and then they can determine whether they're appropriate for treatment here.
If the referral service is successful, the hospital wants to open an accident and emergency unit in about 12 months. Meanwhile, Area Health Boss Dr Tim Smythe says establishing an accident emergency service for people who drive to the hospital is one thing. Establishing a unit which involves ambulances may create problems.
After all, I don't think we want to see ambulance officers having to ask people, do you have private health insurance, is the first question when they get to an accident.
Dr Smythe hopes to discuss the issue with Warners Bay Hospital. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
May Day as we know it was first held in 1923 in the coalfields, but long before then, workers were openly displaying their comradeship and desire for better working conditions. This parade called for an 8-hour day, and it's still remembered in October each year. The exhibition is called Carnival and Unity. It features the work of Ralph Snowball, and it looks at the union and working movement in the region from 1892 to 1914. These labourers were building the sulphide plant at Boolaroo, while others were stonemasons. The stone in the centre of this photo was from the Hunter Street Post Office, then under construction. The exhibition features engine drivers and cleaners, wharf labourers, boilermakers, shipbuilders, bakers and butchers.
It's part of the social life as well as the working life, because it also includes the kind of clothing the people wore. Their background are the buildings of Newcastle they're standing in front of.
The exhibition is opened at the Regional Library until the end of June.
It's the 6th year of the East Coast Tri-Challenge off-road car race. It originally started as a contest between 3 clubs from Newcastle, Sydney and Kempsey, but this year other clubs from throughout the state are competing. Racing at Kempsey this weekend is round 2 of the challenge. Almost 80 cars are competing in 9 classes. 5 of these are off-road buggies, the remainder modified sedans. The aim is to complete 3 laps of the 2-kilometre course as fast as possible. Each class will do this 5 times. The car times then added together to judge class winners, the club with the most points taking the round. The Tri-Challenge race coincides with the first round of the New South Wales Driver Championship. So, as well as racing for their club, competitors are earning individual points for the Driver Championship. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
It's not as if the competition is a gathering of losers. Rather, it's a tournament for bowlers who have not won a major event. That simply means the entrants are the young Turks of the sport coming up through the ranks and the seasoned bowlers who have been unlucky enough not to crack the big time. $1,500 prize money is up for grabs, and it was bound to attract a plethora of talent. And on day 1 of the Round Robin Carnival, brilliant shots were par for the course. The annual event is again being hosted by the North Tamworth Bowling Club. The final will be held at 1:30 tomorrow afternoon. The only disappointment for the winner is that he won't be invited back to next year's singles.
Despite recent turmoil in industrial relations, representatives from various unions joined forces in an historical show of solidarity. The colourful floats and 500-strong procession made its way from Civic Park to the foreshore. Representing just how far workers will carry the fight, the New Vale miners marched as a unified front. Local celebrations have come a long way since the first May Day Grantee 100 years ago. Both Jack Onslow and Jock Graham have been union members for 64 years. They've seen many changes and predict there'll be more.
The only salvation for the trade union movement is the question of unity and amalgamations and make big, stronger unions.
And the question of employer and worker coming together to discuss their problems, I think there's a big danger there for the organised working trade union.
An exciting end-to-end soccer was the name of the game for today's clash, only 2 weeks into the 1993 league, and it's shaping up to be a close one. Even though Thistle have been the major premiers in the last 2 years, they failed to intimidate the workers. The workers displayed a business-like approach to the showdown, and their tireless efforts were rewarded minutes from the end of the first half with a goal. Both teams are shaping up as forces to be reckoned with, judging on today's performance. It seems some masters of the trade can make anyone lose their heads over magic. It's the 26th year they've gathered in Newcastle, sharing trade secrets.
Yeah, we like to ask each other how's tricks and what's new in the world of magic. There is a little bit of secrecy, but particularly some of the older ones, they like to pass on the secrets to us younger guys. So we do live in a high-tech sort of computer video age, but I think magic's got a special appeal, especially happening live right before people's eyes.
As a magician, what's your favourite act?
Actually, it's making people vanish. Abracadabra.
Cessnock has plenty of holes in the ground caused by mining, but there's no immediate problems with waste disposal. The council is on a recycling awareness drive.
Well, we're encouraging people to come to the tipping entrance, to tell the man on the gate that they have recyclables, who will allow them in at a reduced rate, and we invite them to come along and participate in recycling.
There's also a recovery team at the tip which has already salvaged a sizable stock of cast-offs, offering a surprising number of workable appliances from the tip face. While getting its own house in order, Cessnock is still concerned that the state government may encourage the transportation of Sydney's garbage to this area. The council will hold talks on Wednesday night with John Stipwich, the man behind plans to rail and truck garbage to Stockrington.
We don't need to encourage recycling because of our huge land area. However, we are participating in recycling, and we feel that if the people of Sydney participated more, they wouldn't need our land to dump their rubbish in.
In 1989, residents were calling for a bypass to take Pacific Highway traffic away from the town. It's been a long process, but the final environmental impact statement for the route is now before the RTA's Chief Executive, Bernard Fisk. The RTA's preferred option is a 6.5 kilometre two-lane route between Masonite Road and Bellevue Street, with bridges at Richardson Road and Mount Hall Road. If all goes to plan and the route is approved, then work will begin later this year and will be completed in 1996. A number of properties would have to be purchased to make way for the road. Negotiations with the owners are expected to begin shortly. The bypass should relieve traffic congestion in Raymond Terrace, particularly around holiday time, when RTA figures show that 70% of northbound and 80% of southbound cars would use a relief route. The RTA also believes the number of accidents will be reduced. A total of 143 accidents were recorded on the Pacific Highway between Masonite Road and Richardson Road over a 4.5-year period.
The fishermen packed into the Hexham Bowling Club near Newcastle, fiercely opposing any move to bring a quota system into the local industry. Quotas are already in operation from Sydney south. Fishermen saying the restrictions are killing the industry. But the government argues there are only limited resources in the ocean. As professional fishermen become more efficient, fish numbers can only drop. A quota system, they say, could check overfishing. Mr Causley faced a barrage of abuse, the fishermen saying any move towards quotas and associated management fees would break them. The minister also hinted the government should get out of the Sydney fish markets and bring in the private sector. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Food. Every day we make choices about what we eat. But how do you choose a diet that reduces? Seems the people from France, Greece, Italy and Japan may have the answer. They're some of the countries with the lowest incidence of heart disease in the world, and a contributing factor is what they eat. Dietitian Margaret Rush says in Mediterranean countries, olive oil is used instead of butter.
They use lots of fibre, lots of carbohydrate food, so there's lots of bread, fruits and vegetables that feature prominently in their diets.
Unfortunately, when migrants come to Australia, they often pick up bad habits, replacing their old diet with fast, fatty foods. So their risk of heart disease increases.
I think they can learn from each other because each cuisine has got something to offer. So why not go around and taste low-fat ideas from each cuisine and then have a truly cosmopolitan diet.
The food fair at Newcastle City Hall was organised by the Migrant Health Service. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The occasion was a Making Friends with Music lunchtime concert at the Cons Lehman Street Performance Hall, with 200 district school children bussed in to join the regular Thursday audience. But this time, there was a difference. At the end of teacher John Kellaway's rendition of the last movement of Hummel's Trumpet Concerto in E, a twist. A lucky door prize was drawn, the reward to conduct the orchestra. That honour went to Sophie Carmichael from the Holy Family School at Merriweather Beach, and didn't she make the most of it? And afterwards, no complaints.
What was John Kellaway like to play with?
Okay.
Did he play all the right notes? You didn't notice any problems?
Don't think so.
And from the maestro, Associate Professor Robert Constable, also no complaints.
I think she did splendidly. I mean, I was able to leave the stage and leave her to it.
And the Con plans more such hijinks in its music outreach program to make its orchestra more accessible to an already music-keen community.
Mining and energy are already Australia's biggest export earners, but those industries could be pouring away extra profits once the resources are taken from the earth, according to the University of Newcastle's Vice-Chancellor, Professor Raoul Mortley.
We're good at getting the metals out of the ground quickly and cheaply, but we're not so good at the sophisticated economic side.
To develop understanding of the industry's economy, the Australian Centre for Mineral and Energy Economics is to be established at Newcastle University. From next year, students from Australia and overseas can study at the centre, the first of its type in the country.
The idea behind it is to train a generation of students in mineral economics to produce a set of people with skills in that area.
$760,000 have been raised for the centre in a coming together of the academic and corporate worlds. Professor Mortley says the facility will also offer consultants to companies, helping make Australia a clever country and better using the nation's resources.
The doing better consists in being more sophisticated about adding value to our raw products, marketing them, dealing with the commodity markets.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Mark Glanville was in the Knights' Chief Executive's chair today, signing up for seasons 94 and 95. The lock forward was approached by a leading Sydney club, and he admits he'd probably have better representative chances with one of the glamour sides. But the 26-year-old has stuck by Newcastle.
I guess, with a Manly or a Canterbury or someone, they may have a bit more influence, but I've got no regrets with signing with Newcastle. I've played pretty well, and the club's been good for me and the town's been good for me.
Glanville was with Newcastle from day one back in 1988. He's played 98 first-grade matches, more than any other Knight. Mr Consistency, he's famous for his tremendous cover defence and probing runs up the middle. The club rates him as one of their most valuable players.
Is he more than 80 grand a season?
He's well looked after.
The Knights have only re-signed 4 first graders for next year. Suffice to say, negotiations are well underway to retain the top players. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
A full moon shone over Newcastle for the occasion. It made the cathedral lights almost unnecessary as the Right Reverend Roger Hurft knocked on the Great West door, announcing his arrival. Once inside, Bishop Hurft, born and raised in Sri Lanka, was blessed by Dean Lawrence, who had been acting bishop following Bishop Holland's retirement. The bishop left the throne and walked to the chancel step, where he was presented to the people of Newcastle as their spiritual head. He is the 11th Bishop of Newcastle. He spent the past 10 years in New Zealand, including a term as Bishop of Waikato. Bishop Hurft, whose wife Cheryl and teenage sons Romesh and Jason were at the ceremony, made a sometimes humorous speech before conducting Holy Communion.
The Salvos are calling on the community to lend a hand to those less fortunate.
Right from family welfare bureaus to homeless kids, aged persons, drug and alcoholic rehabilitation, etc.
At the Hunter launch of the Red Shield appeal, local businessmen were asked to dig deep. The Salvos saying it's getting tougher and tougher for Aussie battlers each day. Last year, more than 350,000 families around Australia were assisted by the Salvation Army welfare centres. That's an increase of 40% on the year before.
There are still a lot of people out there who find it very, very difficult to cope, to manage.
The traditional door knock appeal is Sunday the 23rd of May. In conjunction with business donations, it's hoped $35 million can be raised across the country. That money going some of the way in paying the Salvo's $170 million social services budget. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Despite an exhausting trip last weekend to Adelaide and Perth, the Falcons have still got the spring in their step. Being second on the competition, both rate themselves as underdogs, but when they come together they fight like terriers. That brawling starts before they even get on the court.
Well, they got Butch Hayes, is probably one of the best point guards in the league, and he's really directing things out there, making the lesser known players much better than they really are.
American import Everett Stevens even knows the Hawks have been their own worst enemy.
Illawarra is a team in which very seldom in the past years have beat themselves, so it's going to be a fight to the end, and I think if we can stick with our game plan, which we're going to have with Illawarra, I think it's going to be a good game.
The enthusiasm and confidence in the Falcons camp is unlike any previous year. The win against Perth, where most punters in the game had them written off, served as proof to themselves that they can be winners. They intend to make winner a permanent part of their vocabulary by beating Illawarra tomorrow night. The judges actually called for a photo for that finish. The trifecta paid $7.59 and 60 cents, the Quinellas $66.50. And at Morfordville, a good strong finish in the South Australian Derby. The winner, Our Pompeii, paid $5.30 and 180. Adam Wallace from Windale collected the award for Best All-Rounder and received the biggest applause of the night, most of it though from his own teammates. Dale Turner from the Allinga Club racked up 692 runs for the year, earning him Best Run Scorer. The auditorium of the Cardiff Workers Club was packed, and there wasn't one word of discontent when Stagg and Hunter were named A-Grade Team of the Year. Stephen Wheelhouse from the Phoenix Club was voted A-Grade Player of the Year and made a very short acceptance speech. New South Wales and Australian cricketer Greg Matthews played the role of guest speaker and kept everyone enthralled with a speech bordering on an R rating.